Captain Jake Morrison stood at the edge of the observation deck on Galactic Council Station Harmony and watched the stars spin slowly past the massive windows. His reflection stared back at him, showing a man who looked tired in ways that sleep could not fix. 50 years of careful words and polite smiles had worn him down like water wearing away stone. Behind him, the great council chamber buzzed with the voices of 100 different alien species, each one convinced they knew exactly what humans were capable of. They had no idea. Lieutenant Amy Barnes walked up beside him, her tablet clutched in her hands like a shield. She had been his aide for 3 years now, and she understood the weight he carried better than most. Every day they came to these meetings and pretended that humanity was just another small species trying to find its place among the stars. Every day they bit their tongues when aliens spoke about Earth like it was some backward farming world that barely qualified for membership in the galactic community. "Sir, the session is about to begin," Amy said quietly. Her voice carried the same strain that Jake felt in his chest. "The Zephyrian delegation has requested priority speaking time." Jake nodded and straightened his uniform. The fabric felt heavier today, weighted down with decades of diplomatic lies. He had worn this same style of dress uniform to his first council meeting when he was just a young officer full of hope for humanity's future among the stars. Back then, he believed that showing the galaxy humanity's peaceful nature would earn them respect and friendship. Instead, it had earned them dismissal and contempt. The two humans walked back into the council chamber, where representatives from across the galaxy had gathered in their usual seats. The Altarian delegation sat in their crystalline chairs that hummed with harmonic frequencies. The vegan traders occupied their floating platforms that never quite touched the ground. The proud Centauri warriors stood at attention in their ceremonial armor that gleamed under the chamber's artificial lights, and then there were the Zephyrians. Lord Vextara rose from his seat as Jake and Amy took their places at the small human delegation table. The Zephyrian ambassador was tall and thin, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow from within. His species had controlled 36 star systems for over 1,000 years, and he never let anyone forget it. His eyes found Jake's across the chamber, and there was something in that look that made Jake's hands clench into fists. "Honored delegates," Vextara began, his voice carrying easily through the chamber's acoustics, "I come before you today with a proposal that will benefit all civilized worlds in our great community." He paused, letting his words sink in. As we all know, the expansion of galactic civilization has created certain challenges. Industrial waste, biological contaminants, and other byproducts of advanced society must be disposed of safely. Jake felt Amy tense beside him. They both knew where this was heading. "After careful study, my science teams have identified the perfect solution," Vextara continued. "The human homeworld, Earth, possesses unique characteristics that make it ideal for large-scale waste disposal operations. The planet's heavy gravity and dense atmosphere can contain even our most dangerous materials. More importantly, humans have proven themselves remarkably resistant to environmental hazards." A murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. Jake watched as alien heads nodded and delegates leaned forward with interest. To them, this made perfect sense. Humans were tough enough to handle a little contamination, and Earth was far enough from the core worlds that any problems would not affect civilized space. "The proposal is simple," Vextara said, his voice growing stronger. "We establish disposal facilities on Earth's less populated continents. The humans can oversee the operations, providing them with valuable employment and technical knowledge. In return, the galactic community gains a safe and permanent solution to our waste management needs." The Altarian delegate chimed in with musical tones that the translation system rendered as enthusiastic support. The vegan traders calculated profit margins out loud. Even the normally stoic Centauri warriors seemed pleased with the efficiency of the proposal. Jake Morrison had spent 50 years of his life listening to aliens talk about humanity like they were not quite real people. He had smiled through conversations where his species was described as barely evolved primates who were lucky to have been discovered by galactic civilization. He had nodded politely when alien children pointed at him in stations and asked their parents why the human looked so much like the primitive creatures in their xenobiology textbooks, but this was different. This was not just dismissal or casual contempt. This was his species being relegated to the role of garbage collectors for the galaxy. This was Earth being turned into a dumping ground because aliens thought humans were too stupid and too worthless to deserve better. All in favor of Resolution 2847 regarding the establishment of waste disposal operations on the human homeworld? The council speaker announced. Hands, tentacles, and other appendages rose throughout the chamber. Jake counted them automatically, his diplomatic training taking over even as rage built in his chest like a pressure cooker about to explode. 67 votes in favor, 12 abstentions, 3 votes against. All from species that had their own waste disposal problems and did not want competition. 0 votes from the human delegation because they had not been given time to respond. The laughter started when the Zephyrian Jr. Attach made a joke about humans being naturally suited for handling garbage since they came from such a messy planet. Other aliens joined in, their various forms of amusement filling the chamber with sounds that made Jake's teeth ache. They were laughing at his species. They were laughing at his home. They were laughing at everything he had spent his life trying to protect. Amy Barnes reached out and touched his arm, her fingers finding the spot where his muscles had gone rigid with suppressed fury. She could see the change in his posture, the way his breathing had shifted from diplomatic calm to something much more dangerous. "Sir," she whispered, "remember the protocols." But Jake Morrison was done with protocols. He was done with pretending that humanity was weak. He was done with hiding what his species really was just to make aliens comfortable. He was done with 50 years of lies. He stood up slowly, his chair scraping against the floor with a sound that cut through the alien laughter like a blade. The chamber began to quiet as delegates noticed the human representative rising to speak. Jake walked to the central podium, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. He looked out at the assembled delegates, these proud representatives of galactic civilization who thought they knew everything about the species that came from the small blue world at the edge of known space. His hands found the podium's edge, and he gripped it hard enough that the metal began to bend under his fingers. "You want to see Deathworlders?" Jake Morrison said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's perfect acoustics. "Fine." Admiral Lisa Grant received Jake Morrison's transmission at 3 in the morning Earth time, but she had been awake anyway. She always was when their council sessions ran long. 50 years of watching her people get treated like children had taught her to expect bad news from Harmony Station. But this transmission was different. This time, Jake's voice carried something she had not heard in decades: relief. "Lisa," Jake said from the hologram projector in her office, his image flickering slightly due to the distance. "The vote passed. They want to turn Earth into their garbage dump. 67-3. He paused, and Lisa could see the change in his face. The careful diplomatic mask was gone, replaced by something much more honest. "I told them we're done pretending." Lisa Grant had been waiting for this day since she first put on a uniform. She had spent her entire career watching humanity's greatest achievements get classified as state secrets, hidden away so that aliens would not realize what they were really dealing with. The galaxy thought humans were barely capable of space travel. They had no idea that human ships could cross the void between galaxies in the time it took most aliens to travel between neighboring star systems. She opened a secure channel to every human military installation, every research facility, every colony that had spent decades hiding their true capabilities. Her fingers moved across the control panel with practiced ease, entering codes that had been prepared for this moment but never used. "This is Admiral Grant to all stations," she said, her voice reaching across light years to touch every human. "Outpost in known space. Operation Honest Truth is now active. I repeat, Operation Honest Truth is now active. Show them what we really are." On the mining station orbiting Proxima Centauri, Captain Tyler Brooks smiled as he read the message. He had been commanding the UES Havoc for 8 years, telling everyone who asked that it was a simple cargo vessel designed for short-range missions between nearby systems. That was the biggest lie he had ever told in his life. The Havoc was not a cargo ship. It was not even close to a cargo ship. "Maria," he called to his chief engineer, "how long since we've opened her up?" Chief Engineer Maria Lopez looked up from her console where she had been pretending to struggle with basic maintenance protocols. Like everyone else on the ship, she was tired of acting incompetent. "About 2 years, sir." "Right after that, Altarian?" "Inspector said our engines were primitive and probably dangerous." Tyler laughed, remembering the inspection. The Altarian had spent 3 hours examining their fake engine room, the one they showed to visitors. He had written a report describing human technology as crude but functional, noting that their ships could barely manage interstellar flight. If only he had seen the real engines hidden behind walls of advanced camouflage technology. "Well, we've got a delivery to make," Tyler said, bringing up the navigation display. "Earth wants us to take some gifts to the core worlds." "Peter, plot?" "A course through the Vega system." Navigator Peter Collins looked up from his station with raised eyebrows. The Vega system was home to one of the galaxy's most important trade centers, surrounded by some of the heaviest space traffic in known space. It was also protected by a massive star that most species considered completely impassable. Ships had to use the long route around the system's edge, adding weeks to any journey. "Sir, are you saying what I think you're saying?" Peter asked. "I'm saying we've been taking the long way around for far too long," Tyler replied. "Take us straight through." The bridge crew exchanged glances that mixed excitement with anticipation. They had all been trained for this moment, but actually doing it felt different. For years they had watched alien ships struggle with basic navigation, taking careful routes that avoided anything more dangerous than a small asteroid field. Meanwhile, human ships had been sneaking through black hole event horizons and using stellar cores as shortcuts. The Havoc turned toward Vega, its real engines coming online for the first time in 2 years. The ship's hull began to shimmer as advanced heat shields activated, systems that could protect them from temperatures that would vaporize most known materials. Inside the ship, the crew went about their preparations with casual efficiency that would have terrified any alien observer. "Entering stellar approach in 10 minutes, Peter announced. "All systems showing green." On the planet below, Dr. Kevin Wright was having his own moment of truth. For 30 years, he had been publishing carefully edited research papers that made human science look primitive compared to galactic standards. He had hidden breakthrough discoveries and revolutionary technologies behind language, so boring that most aliens never read past the first paragraph. His latest paper on fusion technology had deliberately included several small errors to make it look like humans barely understood basic atomic theory. Today, that was going to change. Kevin opened his personal files and began uploading everything. Real fusion technology that could power a city with a handful of hydrogen atoms. Gravitational manipulation systems that treated black holes like tools in a workshop. Dimensional folding techniques that made space itself into a shortcut between distant points. Medical advances that could rebuild a human body from scratch using nothing but genetic templates and raw materials. He titled the new paper, Basic Human Engineering, a primer for non-Deathworld species, and sent it to every major scientific journal in the galaxy. Let them try to explain away fusion reactors the size of coffee cups and medical scanners that could diagnose problems by looking at someone from across a room. The transmission from the Havoc reached Earth just as Kevin finished uploading his research. Tyler's voice came through the speakers with barely contained excitement. "Admiral Grant, this is Captain Brooks. We're approaching Vega now. The locals are trying to contact us about our course, something about dangerous radiation levels." Lisa Grant smiled as she watched the tactical display update. The Havoc was diving straight toward Vega's corona, a region of space where temperatures reached millions of degrees. According to every alien textbook she had ever read, no ship could survive such conditions. According to human engineering specifications, it was just another day at the office. "Tell them we're fine, Captain," Lisa said. "And Tyler? Make sure they're watching when you come out the other side." Across the galaxy, alien observers tracked the human ship with growing alarm. Emergency broadcasts warned all vessels to maintain safe distance from the obvious suicide run. Rescue ships prepared to search for debris. News networks prepared obituaries for the brave but foolish human crew who had apparently forgotten how dangerous stars could be. The Havoc disappeared into Vega's brilliant fire, its signal lost in the overwhelming energy output of the star. For 17 minutes, the galaxy held its breath. Then, on the far side of the system, a ship emerged from the stellar corona like a swimmer surfacing from a lake. Its hull glowed white-hot but showed no damage. Its crew was not only alive but apparently treating the journey like a pleasant afternoon cruise. Tyler Brooks opened a channel to the Vegan Traffic Control Center. "This is U.S. Havoc requesting docking clearance at Station 7. Thanks for the shortcut, by the way. Saved us about 3 weeks." The response was silence. Then, confused alien voices asking questions that had no good answers. How had the human ship survived? What kind of technology could protect against stellar radiation? Were humans completely insane? On Earth, Admiral Grant watched the reports flooding in from across the galaxy. The secret was out now. There would be no more pretending that humanity was weak or primitive or barely capable of space travel. The galaxy was about to learn what Deathworlders really were when they stopped trying to fit in. She opened another channel, this one reaching every human settlement in the galaxy. Phase 1 complete. Begin Phase 2. Let's show them what we do for fun. Sergeant Lucy Hayes checked her equipment one more time as the transport ship approached Pirion 7. The planet below them was dying, its surface covered in volcanic eruptions that had been growing worse for 3 weeks. The Zephyrian colony there had sent desperate messages for help, but every rescue attempt had failed. The heat and toxic gases made the surface completely impossible to reach. According to every galactic expert who had studied the situation, of course those experts had never met humans before. 10 minutes to drop zone, announced the pilot, Lieutenant Ben Carter. His voice was calm despite the fact that he was about to fly a ship through conditions that would melt most alien vessels. Local temperatures holding steady at about 2,000 degrees. Atmospheric composition is mostly sulfur dioxide with traces of hydrogen sulfide. Visibility is near zero due to ash clouds. Lucy nodded and turned to her team. Corporal Danny Foster was adjusting his heat suit with the practiced ease of someone who had done this kind of mission dozens of times. Medic Claire Robinson was running final checks on her medical gear, making sure everything would function in the extreme environment below. They all looked relaxed, like they were preparing for a routine training exercise rather than a rescue mission that the galaxy had declared impossible. "Remember, people," Lucy said, "we're not pretending anymore. No need to make this look harder than it is. Get in, get the colonists, get out, and if anyone asks how we did it, tell them the truth." The ship dropped through the ash clouds like a stone falling through water. Outside the viewports, the sky glowed orange and red with volcanic fire. Streams of molten rock arced through the air like deadly fireworks. The ground below was a maze of lava flows and poisonous gas vents that would kill most aliens in seconds. To the human rescue team, it looked like a really interesting weekend destination. "Touchdown in 30 seconds, Ben announced. "I'll keep the engines warm. Try not to take too long down there." "No promises," Lucy replied. "Claire wants to get some samples for her research project." The ship touched down on a rare patch of solid ground between two active lava flows. The moment the doors opened, the heat hit them like a physical force. Lucy's suit registered external temperatures that would boil most biological fluids, but she felt comfortable enough. Human technology had been dealing with extreme environments for so long that volcanic planets barely qualified as challenging. The Zephyrian colony was 3 kilometers away, built into a mountain that was now surrounded by molten rock. The colonists had been trapped there for days, watching lava flows cut off their escape routes one by one. Their distress calls painted a picture of hopeless people waiting to die in conditions that no rescue mission could survive. They had not counted on humans being completely comfortable with impossible conditions. Lucy led her team across the volcanic landscape like she was taking a walk through a park. Danny carried the emergency supplies, including food and medical equipment that would keep the colonists alive during evacuation. Claire stopped every few hundred meters to collect samples of the volcanic gases, excited by the chance to study chemistry that most species could only observe from orbit. The journey that should have been a desperate race against time became an educational field trip. Lucy pointed out interesting rock formations created by the volcanic activity. Danny noted how the lava flows were creating new geographical features in real time. Claire discovered 3 new chemical compounds that existed only in extreme volcanic environments. They reached the colony in less than an hour, finding 57 Zephyrian civilians huddled in a shelter that was slowly being surrounded by advancing lava. The colonists stared in shock as 3 humans walked casually through conditions that had defeated every other rescue attempt. The temperature outside was hot enough to melt copper, but the humans acted like they were enjoying a pleasant summer day. "Good morning," Lucy said politely as she entered the shelter. "We're here to get you out of this situation. Is anyone injured?" The colony leader, a pale blue Zephyrian named Talmesh, could barely speak. "How did you get here?" "The rescue ships said it was impossible. The heat, the gases, the lava flows. Oh, this?" Lucy gestured toward the hellish landscape outside. "This is nothing. We have vacation resorts on Earth that are more dangerous than this." Danny, start loading the civilians. "Claire, can you check if anyone needs medical attention?" The evacuation proceeded with efficient calm that baffled the Zephyrian colonists. The humans moved through the volcanic disaster zone like they owned the place, carrying civilians across lava flows and through toxic gas clouds without apparent concern. What should have been a terrifying escape became an almost relaxing journey, with tour guides who pointed out interesting geological features along the way. "That's a really nice basalt formation," Danny noted as they passed a fresh lava flow. "You don't see crystalline structures like that very often." "The gas composition here is fascinating," Claire added, taking another sample while carrying an elderly Zephyrian on her back. "The sulfur content is much higher than we usually see in volcanic environments." The colonists began to realize that humans were not just surviving the deadly conditions around them. They were studying them, enjoying them, treating a volcanic apocalypse like an interesting day trip. When they reached the rescue ship, several Zephyrians asked if humans had special technology that protected them from heat and poison. "Not really," Lucy explained as she helped the last colonist aboard. "We're just from Earth. This kind of environment is pretty normal for us." The rescue footage spread across the galactic networks within hours. Alien news services struggled to explain what they were seeing. The same species that other aliens had wanted to use as garbage collectors were casually walking through conditions that would instantly kill most galactic citizens. The humans in the videos were not just surviving impossible circumstances. They were having fun with them. Dr. Helen Carter received calls from alien scientists demanding explanations. How had humans developed such advanced environmental protection? What kind of technology allowed them to treat volcanic disasters like recreational activities? Helen's answers shocked the scientific community even more than the rescue footage. "We don't have any special technology," she explained to a panel of confused alien researchers. "That's just what humans are like. Earth is what you might call a challenging place to live. Volcanic eruptions, toxic storms, radiation exposure, extreme temperatures, we deal with all of that regularly. What you saw on Pirion the 7th was pretty mild compared to some of our vacation destinations." The aliens asked for proof, so Helen showed them videos from Earth, humans surfing on lava flows in Hawaii, humans exploring the inside of active volcanoes. For scientific research, humans living comfortably in places where the air would kill most aliens instantly. Humans treating radiation exposure like a minor inconvenience that required simple safety precautions. "This is normal human recreation," Helen explained. "We call it extreme sports. For fun, humans jump from orbital platforms, race through asteroid fields, and swim in pools of liquid methane. The rescue on Pirion VII was just Tuesday for them. The galactic community began to understand that their assumptions about humanity had been completely wrong. These were not weak primitives who needed protection from dangerous environments. These were beings who considered danger to be entertainment and impossibility to be a personal challenge on Harmony Station. Lord Vexthora watched the rescue footage with growing alarm. His people owed their lives to the same species he had, just voted to treat as garbage collectors. The humans who had saved his colonists from certain death were the same ones he had dismissed as barely evolved primates. The galaxy was learning a very important lesson about making assumptions, and humanity was just getting started showing them what Deathworlders really were when they stopped pretending to be normal. 6 months after the Pirion VII rescue, Karen Stevens walked into the Galactic Council chamber with a smile that made several alien delegates nervous. She had taken over Jake Morrison's position as head of the human delegation, but her approach to diplomacy was very different from his careful politeness. Karen believed in what humans called straight talk, which meant saying exactly what she thought without worrying about alien feelings. The chamber buzzed with worried conversations as she took her seat. Word had spread that the Kraxan Empire was planning to make demands about human expansion into what they considered their territory. The Kraxans were the closest thing the galaxy had to a military superpower, controlling over 100 star systems through force and intimidation. They had never lost a war, and they expected everyone to respect their authority. They were about to learn why that attitude was a mistake. When dealing with humans, General Thokmar of the Kraxan Empire stood to address the council, his massive frame casting shadows across the chamber floor. The Kraxans were large creatures, built like armored bears with too many teeth and not enough patience. They had conquered half their galaxy through simple brutality, and they expected the same tactics to work on everyone else. "Honored delegates," Thokmar growled, his voice carrying the authority of someone who was used to being obeyed without question. "We come before you today to address a growing threat to galactic peace. The humans have been expanding their territory without permission, establishing colonies and systems that border Kraxan space. This cannot be allowed to continue." Karen listened with the patient expression of someone watching a child throw a tantrum. She had read the Kraxan files during her preparation for this meeting. Their military tactics were straightforward. Show up with big ships, make loud threats, and wait for smaller species to surrender. It was an approach that had worked for them for centuries, mainly because they had never encountered anyone who fought back effectively. The Kraxan Empire demands that all human colonies in disputed systems be abandoned immediately, Thokmar continued. Furthermore, humanity must accept Kraxan oversight of their future expansion to prevent further territorial violations. Failure to comply will result in military action to remove the illegal settlements. A ripple of concern went through the chamber. The other alien delegates knew that Kraxan threats were not empty words. When the Empire said they would use military force, they meant it. Ships would arrive, battles would be fought, and someone would end up as radioactive dust floating in space. Karen Stevens stood up slowly, still wearing that same pleasant smile. She had been looking forward to this moment for months. The Kraxans represented everything she disliked about galactic politics: bullying, threats, and the assumption that might made right. They were about to discover why humans had a saying about picking fights with people from death worlds. "General Thokmar," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics, "I appreciate you bringing your concerns to the council. It shows real diplomatic maturity to talk about problems instead of just shooting at them. However, I'm afraid there are a few issues with your demands." Thokmar's eyes narrowed. He was not used to being contradicted, especially not by representatives of small, weak species. "Explain yourself, human." "Well, first, those star systems you're claiming, they're not actually yours. We checked the galactic territorial records going back about 1,000 years. The systems in question have never been formally claimed by the Kraxan Empire. You just assumed they belonged to you because they were close to your space. This was news to most of the council delegates, who had assumed that Kraxan claims were legitimate. Karen had done her research thoroughly, using human data analysis techniques that could process legal documents faster than most alien civilizations could read them. Second, Karen continued, you keep using the word demand like you have some authority over human actions. That's a bit presumptuous, don't you think? We're an independent species with our own government and our own military. You can ask us nicely to do things, but demanding compliance is rather rude. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. Thokmar was not accustomed to being lectured about politeness by species he considered inferior. You dare to question Kraxan authority? We have conquered civilizations that span dozens of star systems. Our military might is unmatched in this galaxy. Karen's smile grew wider. Oh, you mean war? You're threatening us with war? She sounded delighted by the possibility, like someone who had just been offered tickets to their favorite entertainment. That's wonderful. Humans love war. We're really good at it. A casual way she said it sent chills through the assembled delegates. Most species treated war as a last resort, something to be avoided at all costs. The human representative was discussing it like a recreational activity. You think war is amusing? Thokmar demanded. Well, yes, Karen replied honestly. Humans have been fighting wars for our entire history. We've gotten quite good at it over the years. In fact, we're so good at war that we had to stop fighting each other because we kept inventing more efficient ways to destroy things. These days we mostly fight for sport or to help our friends deal with bullies. She gestured toward the data display at the center of the chamber. Would you like to see some examples? We have excellent footage from our recent training exercises. The display lit up with videos that made the alien delegates gasp in shock. Human ships moving through asteroid fields at speeds that should have been impossible, weaving between rocks while firing weapons that could crack moons. Human soldiers training in environments that would kill most galactic citizens instantly. Practicing combat techniques in the middle of active volcanoes. Human engineers testing weapons that bent the laws of physics and treated antimatter like a household tool. This is from last week's military games, Karen explained cheerfully. The exercise was called asteroid dancing, and the goal was to see how fast our pilots could navigate through an asteroid field while engaging multiple targets. The winner completed the course in under 3 minutes while scoring hits on 47 different asteroids. The footage showed human fighters moving through space like they were playing a video game, executing maneuvers that required split-second timing and absolute precision. What looked like certain death to alien observers was apparently standard. Training for human military personnel. Here's a fun one, Karen said, switching to another video. This is from our volcano assault competition, where soldiers practice urban combat techniques in active volcanic zones. It's partly training and partly entertainment. The troops really enjoy the challenge. Thokmar stared at the display with growing disbelief. The humans in the video were fighting mock battles while lava flowed around them, treating conditions that would incinerate Kraxan soldiers like minor background details. Their equipment, their tactics, their casual attitude toward extreme danger, everything about them was wrong, according to his understanding of military operations. Of course, these are just training exercises, Karen noted. We haven't had a real war in decades. It might be nice to have some practice against actual opponents instead of just simulated targets. The silence in the chamber was complete. Even the usually chattering Altarian delegation had gone quiet. Karen Stevens had just implied that humanity would treat a war with the Kraxan Empire as entertainment, a chance to test their skills against something more interesting than training. Dummies. So, Karen concluded, did you want to discuss territorial boundaries like civilized people, or would you prefer to find out what humans do when someone threatens us? Because honestly, either option sounds like fun to me. Thokmar looked around the chamber, suddenly realizing that every other delegate was staring at him with expressions, ranging from sympathy to barely concealed amusement. The species he had come to intimidate was offering him a choice between diplomacy and destruction, and she seemed genuinely happy with either outcome. For the first time in his military career, General Thokmar decided that maybe negotiation was a better option than conquest. 1 year after Jake Morrison's fateful words changed everything, Ambassador Frank Mason stood before the newly assembled Galactic Council in their redesigned chamber. The room looked different now, with human engineering having solved several architectural problems that had plagued the station for decades. The air recycling systems worked better, the artificial gravity was more stable, and somehow the whole place felt more comfortable despite housing twice as many representatives as before. The galaxy had changed in ways that nobody could have predicted. Frank looked out at the assembled delegates and smiled at how different things were now. The Altarian representatives no longer sat in their fragile crystalline chairs, having discovered that human furniture was much more practical and comfortable. The vegan traders had adopted human-designed cargo containers that could hold 3 times as much merchandise in half the space. Even the proud Centauri warriors had quietly started using human training methods that made their soldiers faster and stronger than ever before. "Fellow delegates," Frank began, his voice carrying the easy confidence of someone who no longer had to pretend to be something he was not. "Today marks the first anniversary of what historians are already calling the Great Revelation, when humanity decided to stop hiding what we really are. I think it's time to look at how far we've all come." The changes had started small but spread quickly once the galaxy realized that human technology actually worked better than most of the systems they had been using for centuries. Human medical techniques could cure diseases that had puzzled alien doctors for generations. Human engineering could solve construction problems that had been considered impossible. Human logistics could move supplies across vast distances with efficiency that seemed almost magical. The Zephyrian delegation had been the first to formally apologize, with Lord Vexthara personally traveling to Earth to thank the humans who had saved his people on Perion 7. He had been shocked to discover that the volcanic rescue was considered routine by human standards, and that Earth had entire cities built in environments more dangerous than the disaster zone where his colonists had been trapped. "We have learned much about ourselves and each other this year," Frank continued. "The galaxy discovered that humans are not the primitive species we appeared to be. But more importantly, we learned that honesty makes better neighbors than deception." The proof was visible throughout the chamber. Species that had barely spoken to each other for centuries were now working together on projects that benefited everyone. The Kraxan Empire had become humanity's most enthusiastic military allies after discovering that humans actually enjoyed the kind of challenging combat missions that other species found terrifying. General Thokmar now served as an exchange officer, with human forces learning tactics that had revolutionized Kraxan military doctrine. The Altarians had formed a cultural exchange program with human artists, creating music that combined harmonic frequencies with human rhythms in ways that both species found beautiful. The vegans had established joint trading ventures that used human logistics to move goods faster and cheaper than anyone had thought possible. Even the traditionally isolationist Taotians had opened diplomatic relations after human explorers helped them solve a geological crisis that threatened their homeworld. It turned out that what the Taotians considered an impossible planetary engineering challenge was exactly the kind of project that humans did for fun on weekends. The new galactic accords that we signed today represent more than just updated laws, Frank said, gesturing to the document display. They represent a new way of thinking about what it means to be part of a galactic community. The accords included what everyone now called the Common Sense Clause, a requirement that before any major council decision, someone had to ask a simple question: what would the humans think about this? If the answer involved humans doing something that sounded impossible but would probably work anyway, the proposal got reconsidered with human input. The clause had already prevented 3 potential disasters, including a terraforming project that would have failed catastrophically if not for human engineers, pointing out some basic physics problems that alien scientists had overlooked. Humans had a talent for seeing simple solutions to complex problems, probably because they came from a world where overcomplicated plans usually got you killed by the environment. We've also established new protocols for welcoming species into the galactic community, Frank noted. No more assumptions about capability based on appearance or technology level. Every species gets evaluated honestly, and everyone gets a chance to show what they're really capable of. This change had already helped 2 new species join the Council with full recognition of their abilities instead of being dismissed as primitive. The Rigelians turned out to be masters of quantum engineering despite having technology that looked simple from the outside. The Denebians were incredible mathematicians who could solve calculation problems in their heads that required supercomputers. For most other species, the signing ceremony proceeded with representatives from over 200 species putting their marks on the new accords. Each signature represented not just agreement with the new laws, but acceptance of a new philosophy, that diversity was strength, that different did not mean inferior, and that the galaxy was big enough for everyone to be themselves. After the formal ceremony ended, Frank walked to the observation deck where Jake Morrison was waiting. The former ambassador looked relaxed in a way that Frank had never seen before, like a man who had finally put down a weight he had been carrying for too long. "Any regrets?" Frank asked, joining Jake at the window that looked out over the stars. "About telling the truth?" Jake laughed. "Never. I just wish we'd done it sooner. 50 years of pretending to be weak when we could have been helping people all along. Think about how many problems we could have solved, how many disasters we could have prevented." They watched as a group of human children played in the station's recreational area, their laughter mixing with the sounds of alien youngsters who were learning human games. The kids were playing something that involved floating in zero gravity, while tossing small energy spheres back and forth, casually manipulating forces that would have impressed most adult aliens. "The kids don't even understand why it was ever a secret," Jake observed. "To them, this is just normal life. Humans and aliens working together, everyone being honest about what they can do." Frank nodded. Maybe that's how it should be. Maybe. The next generation will build something better than what we had because they never learned to be afraid of being themselves. A chime sounded through the station, announcing the arrival of a new ship. According to the display, it was an exploration vessel returning from the galaxy's edge with news of first contact with a previously unknown species. The message included a request for diplomatic personnel who specialized in helping new civilizations understand their place in the galactic community. Frank smiled as he read the mission parameters. Another chance to help someone else learn that being different was not something to hide or apologize for. Another opportunity to show that the galaxy was better when everyone could be honest about who they really were. "Looks like we've got work to do," he said. Jake Morrison looked out at the stars one more time, then turned toward the docking bay where a new adventure was waiting. "Let's go show them what Deathworlders are really like," he said. The honest version this time. The galaxy had learned an important lesson about making assumptions and hiding strengths. But more importantly, it had learned that the universe was a much more interesting place when everyone stopped pretending to be something they were not.